No, you don't want to be on TV today. Whoa, nice sliding. Okay, and she's down. Okay. So, just like in the last episode, you saw all those adjustments that I had to make. That problem was not exclusive to the arms, it was the whole thing. I think it was like George Lucas said this. I'm not even a Star Wars fan. Art's never finished, it's abandoned. I know the whole thing's a joke, but, well, we joke about it every time you hear it. It's stupid and funny, but there is truth to it. Obviously you have deadlines all the time, whatever you're working on. At some point you do have to like wrap up what you're working on and finish it. Same thing with your costumes. If you start early enough you can wiggle with things, but eventually you have to start moving forward. It's the same exact thing. Just like with drawing too. Imagine you're doing your rough outline to get your pose and your posture and your positions and your proportions, all that stuff. Once you nail that down, you can keep playing with that as much as you want, but eventually you got to start laying down your hard lines. I'm not saying that these are done and perfect, but at some point you got to be like, okay, I got to stop fidgeting with it, move on to the next phase. Getting the fitment and scaling on this was that. Yeah, it was hands down probably the longest part of this build so far. I swear it was like at least a month and a half of just pure adjustments after I had built like the base construction of everything else. It was long, tedious. I got to a point where I just didn't want to do it anymore, but I kept forcing myself through it because eventually once I got it done, I could get to the detailing phase, and that's where the fun is. But something I haven't really shown on here or on Facebook really yet, which I probably should, is I make tons and tons of notes. But I'm constantly drawing, making notes and references, just on how I want things to work, fit, and then of course constantly working on scheduling. This isn't going to be a video on scheduling or anything like that, but yeah, it is something you want to constantly keep reevaluating, that way you can start getting things done in time. Like I said, at some point you have to be like, I need to make a hard stop here and then just move on to the next phase, because otherwise you'll spend the rest of the time just doing that, and eventually you might just end up abandoning the project because it's going to sit, because you don't want to do any more adjustments when really you could just stop doing adjustments and just go straight on to details. Alright, so like I said, we are on fitment today, or fitment and scaling. This might be another long one, but I'm going to try and crack all this out. Alright, so we'll start with the midsection. Obviously I needed some kind of harnessing to hold all that together, because that was going to be the kind of the core component of the whole thing that's going to hold everything attached to it, or at least waist-wise. I had a leftover backpack piece. If I remember right, I tore it off of the Bowser suit that I was going to make a long time ago, where I had gotten most of the shell done and the helmet. When it came time to us moving and I had to get rid of it, I ripped that out because it was just, instead of trying to make up something, a cheap backpack from Walmart's camping section, it's like $10, and you got your whole harness for everything from your shoulder straps back. So what I did was I took just a regular piece of like thin foam and then sewed it to the back of the backpack. Obviously this was already pre-cut out, so this is just the backing of the backpack, but I sewn that piece of foam to it. That way it had something to glue to the inside of the midsection, and I kind of marked out where kind of like where I wanted it to sit inside, and then just started gluing everything together with contact cement. Will that be enough to hold it? I think so. That's a lot of surface area for contact cement to be holding, and really the only thing that midsection is going to be holding weight-wise is going to be the legs, the upper legs and the shin. As far as the straps go, they ended up just getting hot glued to the front. It did take a couple test fits to try and figure out exactly where I wanted them. I think in the end I ended up changing how I actually had them, because I think they hung up way too high and then the body piece sagged too low. But you still had a lot of playroom with the adjustments on the backpack, which is one thing I do like using backpacks for. I want to say it's what I use for the Terminator Chaplain, It's not what I use for the Raynor. This is the whole reason I don't like wearing the Raynor suit anymore, because of that. It's just not comfortable. Backpack straps, they have padding, you know, and all that stuff's already in there. Alright, so once I got the midsection on, I knew I had to work on the fitment for the leg pieces. Tested everything on just to get an idea of how high I wanted the straps to be. One of the things I have in my storeroom is just a giant box of just clips and straps. I know the plastic clips are getting harder and harder to find locally. I used to be able to buy them at Walmart and packs in the camping section, but they don't carry that anymore, and they only sell them individually in the sewing section, which is so stupid. I went around Michael's, I couldn't find any. I went throughout the entire store. Didn't check Joann's, but I know Hobby Lobby still has some, even though I'm not a fan of that store. But yeah, I glued in a nice strap on the sides to hold the legs, and then and then did the side. I eventually figured out that the side, just having a clip on the side of the hip wasn't good enough. I needed one in the front as well. I'm trying to remember exactly why off the top of my head. I don't know if it was twisting or pulling or something, but I do know it was definitely needed. But yeah, once I got the upper legs, I had to also do the knees, so I started by just doing a strap and a clip at the base of the thigh. Once I had that, I had to try everything back on, because I had to figure out how long I needed that elastic to be between the thigh and the shin. So I already had the clips in and hanging from the thighs, so I kind of took a strap and I put it through the bottom, kind of used some tape to try and figure out how far it needed to be down before it kind of bottomed out. And I also kind of pulled a double duty while I was at it, because I knew that when I was wearing it, the thighs were kind of going like bow-legged, like they were actually going inward, and I needed them to stay out. So I made these like little foam guide plates that would hit my leg and would keep the upper legs sticking outward so that they were straight rather than kind of bowing in. I believe I have notes that I need to do that with some other stuff too. Well, this might be a little bit out of order. So I'll get back to the knee then, I guess. We'll jump to the boots. Alright, so before, I think in the other boot video, I already had like the toe cover piece. I did not like it at all, and I had to make a lot more adjustments, and it wasn't fitting the shape and size of what I wanted. So I redesigned the whole thing. I kept checking with the source references, and they seemed like bigger and kind of higher up, and also wanted them to kind of guide the shin into place so it couldn't move out of range. So I needed them to be kind of higher and angled a little bit higher. But the foot was just tons and tons of adjustments. I kept bringing the toe down because I wanted it to go a little higher. I also needed it to fit in a little deeper. It's hard to remember because I did so many adjustments to the feet. It was nuts. But I think at first I was just doing this to get things a little smaller, or to fit a little better. Yeah, I think I was just doing that to get the toe to fit a little better. Yeah, these pieces of them are going to be kind of stationary onto the actual foot itself once I was done. But the idea was that they were going to end up covering up the toe movement, so I didn't have to worry too much about how things would look at a standstill when the foot was flat. It would cover everything up so that when the toe movement happened, you didn't see anything inside the shoe. Well, but when it went both in and out. I glued everything together, pressed it all together, and I don't think I had to do any major adjustments. These were super easy pieces to make. They fit on nice, they looked nice. They were a lot better than the first one that I tried making. Then I started taping it on there just to get an idea of where I wanted it. Oh jeez. Are you gonna do some more cat ASMR? Oh jeez. Yeah, I ended up cutting out more on the top of the foot because I figured with this new cover I'm gonna have on the boot, I might as well get as much free range as I can to get the toe up as high as I can. But I also had to make sure that I had the the metal plating on the top of the shoe positioned enough that it could like clear the toe as well. So it was a little bit of a fight between the two, but in the end it was worth it. And just to make sure it kind of held its shape too, I took another piece of scrap paper and kind of made a reinforcement on the inside. That way I knew the bend would at least be a little more consistent between the two pieces. At the time too, I noticed that when I had assembled the Shin, that there was a weird like curve in the corners, and when I was referencing the images from before, it was a straight round kind of thing. I'm not sure how that happened from the template, but I knew it needed fixed before I started putting on like the knee shield. So I took a template out, or took some scrap paper, traced around that corner, and then tried to round it out as best I could, and came with these little like little saucer pieces that just needed glued on to both the left and right, both legs. And then I went back into the what are those? Those are the yeah, those are those cutouts for the foot plate. One thing you'll notice a lot of times in these videos is that I'm constantly kind of juggling two projects at once. Contact cement takes about 5 minutes to dry, give or take 3 to 5 minutes. So instead of just playing on my phone, I'll have another project on the side, so while something's drying, I'm working on something else. So in this case, I'm working on the foot shields, and then I'm also working on the knee of the Shin, kind of going back and forth between the two. It's a nice little time-saving trick. It does lead you to be a little scatterbrained sometimes, but keep them simple. It's usually not that hard to mix them up. I mean, you can't always do it, but when you can, it helps, especially on the simple stuff like this. Yeah, so here I kept trying to outline where I wanted it to be. I do want to say, like, shortly after I did that, I started realizing that I'm also going to have to put trim on the bottom of the shoe for like the actual tread of the boot. And I was like, well, I don't want it to be too far where those two are going to touch or overlap. So I think I remeasured, and I want to say it was probably 2 inches off. Yeah, and just because I knew it was going to be getting glued on, I ended up just beveling the whole edge beforehand. Gave the contact cement something more to kind of like grab onto too, because that Harbor Freight foam has a textured underside, and contact cement doesn't like that. I don't know what they do to the foam on that side, because for some reason it has a different texture. It's almost like they heated, though they probably did like heat stamp it or something to get that texture. It's kind of like after you kind of like take a heat gun to your foam, you know, it kind of like seals the whole thing. Contact cement doesn't like it as much as it does a rough surface. So just to make sure it would stay, because I knew it was going to get some wear, at least from the toe, probably bumping up against it constantly, I wanted to make sure it stayed, so I just gave it a nice Dremel bit to smooth it all out before I handed in the contact cement. Yeah, from there I was a little conflicted on how to handle the rest of the boot. I knew that the circle piece on the ankle was going to have to move forward. Same with the back plating, it was going to need redone. Or the opening in the front of the Shin was going to need raised just a little bit. There was a ton of like weird little adjustments I was going to have to make. So I started by opening up the front just a little bit, because I knew that with these plates on the foot sticking up a little higher, it was going to create a lot more resistance, and I wanted to have just a little bit extra room to play, both in forward bend, backward bend, side to side, and all that. And we have another cameo from the cat. Yes, from here I just used regular duct tape just to kind of work out the trim around the sole of the shoe, drawing out the raise of the heel and the boot. I don't even know if it's even noticeable, but little details. Then once I had that, I traced the whole thing out onto regular foam. I don't remember how thick that was. It was probably 8 mil. And then I glued that all back on. I apparently don't have video of it, but I did do some fitment adjustment on the foot. So when I was doing all that, I realized that I don't know if I can just pull it out. Okay. Gotta pet the kitty cat. So, like I mentioned in my other video, You know, you got the expanding foam inside there that holds the whole thing together. Well, I knew that when I was going to be putting on like the actual trim for the side in here. I also did make a video for making a new back piece. Huh. Well, I don't know. Must have been tired, or I lost a lot of videos. Somewhere along the line I lost a lot of the shoe stuff. I was doing a lot of random stuff like in the morning after work, so I might have just forgotten to record. But I'm going off topic on what I actually want to talk about. So when I was putting on all this side foam stuff here, I knew that between this and this here and this piece here, that was going to bulk out the shoe a little bit. And when I was doing one of my test fittings, I started walking around some, and I was kind of like hitting my own feet when I was walking. And I'm like, okay, well, that plus with the Shin kind of not fitting around this that well, the idea I had was, well, these need to be narrowed a lot. There was one problem. There is a lot of expanding foam inside. This posed a little bit of a dilemma. It was a real pain in the butt. So before I, it all started before I actually put this back piece on. This curvature you see in the back, like right there, that was a lot worse. It was like from here and it just went the whole way in. I had to address that because with this piece here, it would have not wrapped around. This would have been terrible. It was originally like out to here, so I brought the whole thing in. It's almost flush now up against the little blocks that are inside this and the back. Reason being was because the Shin itself was not resting. It was resting real tight, and I wanted to be more loose so that I could have the foot flex that I needed. The only way to do that was to bring this in. So cutting expanding foam inside this was the biggest pain in the butt ever. But once I got that done, I closed the whole back in before I started doing all this detail. But like I said before, I also had issues when my feet were hitting each other. So I took about an inch off on each side and brought them in. Now obviously that posed another problem, because once I did that, obviously the toe was no longer fitting inside, so I had to bring this in as well. And this is a lot easier because there's still nothing inside this. It's still hollow. I probably will put something in the very front of the toe for weight, so that when I do step forward, when I go to bring my foot back, I need something to weigh that down. And the best thing to do that is just some weight. So what I'm gonna have is I'll have some, like, so yeah, I got this strap here. I'll probably put another one here and on this side, and that'll kind of help hold the hinge together between here tight. But I'll have probably an elastic strap or something, or it could just be nylon, doesn't really matter, on the top, and I'll have it run from up here inside the actual shoe, not the guide plate but the shoe. And I'll make sure I have it set to be like an exact length, so that it stops right there and doesn't go beyond there. That way when my foot is flat, it lays flat, and then when it drops back down, even if my foot's in the air, it will not go beyond that flat spot. That's still on the list, but those were extra adjustments I had to make to the whole thing. Some of these videos I did post on Facebook Reels and on, Facebook Reels, YouTube Reels, whatever. I can never keep that crap straight. But I was just showing off how well the travel worked with the shoe itself. For the most part, it looked pretty good. I don't think I've made any adjustments to the shoes since then, but they're gonna serve the purpose that I need. Anything else I do to them is just gonna be cosmetic. Yeah, so in that clip you also notice that I have like the upper knee adjustments. These videos aren't 100% in order. I'm trying my best to keep them in order, but just kind of like when I was showing with the foot plate cover, I'm juggling usually between two pieces at once. So in one clip you might see something a little farther, and in the next clip it might be back to where it was. I'm trying. Alright, so if we're back to the knee, it looks like. Alright, so we're going back to where we were. After the thighs. I don't think I needed to make any more major adjustments after that with the knee. But yeah, it was a weird process to get the two to kind of like line up but also measure it. So yeah, I had glued the strap onto the thigh and ran the strap through the clip and kept the clip assembled, then ran a loose piece on the bottom half, and then I kind of lined that up where I wanted it on the shin. Then just took some tape to kind of mark where it was going to line up on a certain point in the shin, which I think was I can't remember where. But then I just undid the clip, took the shin back off, laid it in place, traced where I wanted everything to be, and then I knew that that was where I needed it to glue and all that. I tried explaining it in the last video and it just sounded like I have mental problems or something. It sounds like I was crazy. In reality, it's not that complicated, but it's kind of hard to show because bad camera angles and the nylon strips are all black, so you can't see anything. Yeah, I think here, am I testing it on with yeah, it looks like I'm testing it on for the first time with the straps attached to the shin, or I'm at least getting maybe the outsides. Yeah. Oh, okay. I remember this now. Yeah, so I had glued everything in place, but when I went to test fit it, I had the shins just a hair too low, and I had two options to deal with this. I could either rip it off and re-glue it, or run new strips, which I did not have, and I didn't want to go buy. Or my other option was to cut it and then sew it. So that's what I did. I cut the nylon strap, made a marker where I actually needed to be adjusted to, so I could raise the shin up just a little bit, and then I somehow squeezed it into my sewing machine and sewed it. Good thing it was elastic straps rather than nylon, because it had some stretch to it, so I was able to pull it out and then run it in. And after that I test fitted it again, and this time it was good. Sable, stop mooning the camera. I'm gonna have to put up another blur, another skull sensor like I had in my other video. Yeah, but from there, while I was wearing it, I have a small dry erase board, so I started using that to start making notes while I'm testing things out. That way I don't forget anything. I can just right there on the spot, this needs done, that needs done, this needs fixed and adjusted. So yeah, that got me the shin, or the knee, I guess. Now onto the shins. This probably got very messy. I started by doing all the circles. I think these ones were just for the circles around the knee, which are already on in some of the other videos. I don't remember exactly how I decided what size they were, measurements and all that stuff. Just whatever felt right. I do believe that these were 2 layers glued together and then just dremeled round. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. In this part, I started making up a small little guide plate inside the knee of the shin. So, like with the thigh, where it was getting a little bow-legged and I needed to bring the thigh pieces out, where I made the little guide piece, I needed the same thing on the shin, because I needed the shin to not go back any farther than a certain point. So I made this on the inside of the knee, so that it would end up butting up against my knee if it went back too far. So it was kind of like a dead stop. That way the proportions wouldn't go out of whack. There's still a couple other spots where I need to do that with some other things, fitment wise. I think I need to do it with my arms. I think I want to bring the upper arms and I think part of the gauntlets out a little bit, just to get them away from me. And from there I started working on the knee shield, since I already had filled in the little dips I had in the knee beforehand, and then I had that backing place, that dead stop that would butt up against my leg. All of that helped create like a nice smooth round surface for me to attach then the knee shield. According to my reference, I think it only needed to be about 2 to 2.5 inches, but I think I went for 3 just in case. I think I mentioned this on Facebook. I would much rather shave it off if I need to than add to it. Might have mentioned it on one of my posts on YouTube too. But again, these were 2 layers, I think. Yeah. I can't remember how thick this foam was. I was bouncing around between a lot of stuff, mostly 8 and 10 mil. Then after I glued the pieces together, I kind of used part of that backing plate, that dead stop for my knee, as also part of a mounting point. Gave it something a lot more sturdy to hold on to than just that real thin, well, not thin, that's probably 10 millimeter foam, but it was a lot more sturdy for it to hold on to. Plus that dead stop piece, I don't know what I would actually call that. It also helps hold that knee shape as well. So when I go to actually mount the knee guard, it's consistent. You know what I mean? It's not going to tug and pull when I put it on, because everything there already has a consistent, steady shape, which is a problem you can run into with parts like this when it comes to like warping. When I first started putting them together, they were very like angle warped just from sitting. Alright, so once I had that figured out, I had a couple other issues I needed to figure out. So first I started figuring out the new size of the ankle joint. I kind of came to like a compromise because I needed it to be flush up against the front corner, but if I did that, then things weren't going to line up. So I kind of realized I'll move it back just a hair, but also make the ankle joint bigger. But I think while I was doing that, did I cut more off? Yeah, I cut more off of the front part too. I almost kind of regretted this at first once I put it on, but I'm fine with it now. But as I was trying to figure out this ankle joint, that's when I realized my I still hadn't put the back plate of the foot on yet, and I still needed room for that. So cutting out the front of the ankle, like the front of the shin, I mean, for the ankle, was kind of a remedy to that, but it wasn't working. So I knew I had to take off the back and make the back wider, which was fine because in the past I'd already tried making adjustments to it to try and make it wider, and it did not help, and it made it look uglier. So I cut the entire back of the shin off, used it as a template, and then just extended it. I can't remember how far I extended it. It wasn't super far. I want to say maybe it was 2 inches on both sides. I don't know. We'll have to watch and find out. See if I can see. Yeah, it was either an extra inch or an extra 2 inches. But obviously I also need that overhang too, because it needs to kind of glue underneath it. Now this was another screw up of mine. Never thinking ahead like I should. Or it's not that I wasn't thinking ahead, it was more my ideas changed after I was halfway through this. So what I should have done was I should have just redid the entire center line between those two top and bottom pieces and made them exactly the same, so I could spread them apart and put a piece behind them. So whatever I was looking at before, I think I thought that they were overlapping, where like one was over the other, but when I was looking at the models and the figures, there's actually just a recess underneath between in that line. So it's like, okay, well I want that because that's going to be more accurate to what I'm making. But at the time, I had the cutout for the two designed for that overlap and not for that separation. It became apparent real quick that these were not going to line up, and I ended up having to do a bunch of trimming just to... Yeah. Then from there I attached them back to the front of the shin. And then I kind of like outlined exactly where I needed to kind of glue the circular piece. Until I ended up putting on the circular pieces, like the ankle circles, the ankle joints. These were back in that state of like early warpage that I had when I first put them together. These ankle circles really did help kind of put that all together. But these things were such a pain in the butt. I want to say they were 3 or 4 layers of foam, which sounds like a lot, but yeah, I'm not showing it much here, but there's... I can't show it here, so pause video and I'll show what I mean. Alright, so in the back, Yeah, so it is 4 layers. So technically it's still 2 layers from the top surface out. But yeah, you can also see this piece here is recessed from here, and then this bottom piece here is also recessed from that. So I needed to put a filler in here and then a filler in here before I do all that. There, if you kind of see what I mean. You know, like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. But yeah, so I had to kind of make out, I had to cut those circles out for those individual spots first before gluing everything together. So when I went to actually glue it all together, it was like a one deal fit. Alright, back to me gluing. Yeah, gluing these together wasn't all that tedious. The part that really sucked was the dremeling, because I knew right off the bat that it was going to be the messiest thing. So beforehand I just tried taking a knife and just trying angling out the very top layer to get it to start that little bit of a bevel, because that top layer is going to be real beveled. Took some stuff off, but dremeling was still a mess. It's hard to see in the video itself, but I actually put up a, since I don't have a Dremel cage, which I would love to make, I put up a giant sheet of foam, taped it to the edge of the table, and that actually blocked most of the dust from going anywhere, and it actually all just stayed right there on the table. I got it all over my arm, obviously, because my arm's right there, but I got very little on my clothes and very little on the floor. It worked, because the way the Dremel's spinning, it's kicking it back to me. So it's kicking it back to me up against that sheet of foam and right back onto the table. Could have a much more effective method, but for not having a little Dremel cage or a little Dremel booth or whatever that's called, this was amazing. Probably after this project I would like to make one. Most people tend to make them out of like giant Tupperware buckets, usually like very clear so you can see in them, obviously, and then with like just some holes in it, and then you get like rubber gloves and glue them to the holes so they can put their hands inside, do their thing, and then everything stays right there. Super nice, super clean. I want one. I want to make one, because this is going to require a lot of dremeling, but unfortunately, now that a lot of stuff is assembled, I think I'm going to have to Dremel. It won't fit in that, so I'm going to be stuck with a mess regardless. That's cosplay and arts and crafts in general. You can try and get yourself out of as much of a mess as you can. You're still going to have a mess in the end, just as long as you clean it up. And yes, I should have worn a mask or something, but surprisingly, because of the dust being contained right there, I had no dust boogers or anything like that, which to me is a good sign that I didn't breathe anything in. You got your ball. You got your ball. Do you want me to throw your ball? I can throw your ball. Oh. I am playing fetch with a cat. You want me to throw it again? Sable. Got your ball. Oh, she's gonna knock over the lights now. That cat is like a dog, I swear. Alright, so where am I at since I wasn't paying attention? Yeah, so once I was all Dremeled out, I cleaned up everything. Then came time to glue everything back to the Shin. Once I had that, it actually helped hold it back into shape. I still want to do a couple more things to make sure that it does hold its shape in total, because it is such a big, wide, round piece. No, Sable, I'm not going to play with you while I'm working. Yeah, so that's actually exactly what I started doing here. I wanted something to act as a little bit of a guide plate for that metal plating on the foot, so that it could actually slide onto it, but also kind of like pivot on it, but not get bound up anywhere. So I used some scrap paper, and I made like a fill-in to try and get an idea of something that would actually fit in that. Yeah, and I made sure I cut both ends at a 45-degree angle. That way that when it would go up against it, it would be facing upward, or rather, well, I guess it's more straight. Huh. Well, I tried. the idea was that it would be it would face in an upward angle. That way, like, you'd have the outer edge, and then the inner edge would be kind of like in a V, so it could just slide over that metal plating on the foot, and then no matter where it went, it just kind of, it gave it extra room to ride it. Well, it gave the Shin extra room to ride that plate, all while at the same time kind of like helping to hold the front of the Shin together solid. That way it didn't have any warp to it. Which, yeah, I think for the most part it actually holds it pretty good. I do think I ended up thinning out that a little bit too because it was too squared. Yeah, so did I do some fill-in pieces, it looks like? Yeah, I did some fill-in pieces to kind of round it out the entire way to the ankle joints. And then once I had them all in place, I kind of found a way to kind of like make them even but also rounded out from that. Yeah, they ended up being a little thinner than what I originally made, but you know, like I said, it's easier to cut things out than it is to add things. I mean, I'm adding something and then cutting it out, but whatever. Yeah, and then I just tried cutting that back piece a little bit smoother. That came by pretty fast, so let me just bring this out a little bit and we'll do a little more show and tell, if I can, because I'm recording with a webcam and it is terrible. 1080p, my ass. So yeah, this bottom piece here, which would be this piece here, it was on the underside of this, so I needed that to be a little more flush, that way nothing would get hung up or bound. I probably might take a Dremel to these later just to make it all smooth, but as of right now it's not important. I cut out what I needed so there's no edges for anything to get hung up on, especially if I was to like twist my ankle, not in a bad way, but like actually twist my foot. I mean, if that way, like say like the plates on the shoe would go past a certain point and get caught, and then I want to twist my foot back and it hits. That's what I'm trying to avoid by doing this. Anything else of note? No, but do you get kind of a better view of this lip here. I don't think I really need anything here. It's possible I probably could put something here, maybe like just that way nothing can get bound up on this, maybe, or here. I don't think it is, but that would be like if I had a ton of extra time and but I'm not worried about it right now. But yeah, you can kind of see the knee guard does seem a little high still, but I still want to wait just a little bit. It's on my list. I'll trim it down if I have to, but I want to wait until I start like actually putting stuff down here to see, because there will be a little bit of, I don't think there's trim, but I think there's like giant rivets here, and that might actually make this seem smaller in comparison when that detail comes out. There's weird like contrasting stuff like that kind of like makes things look bigger or smaller before you start putting details on. I mentioned that in my last video with the pauldrons, because I don't have the shielding on them yet, but I do have the trim. So right now they look like they're about like an inch too high, the shoulders I mean. But when I put the trim on, will it look right, or will it actually, the whole thing be elevated? It's hard to say. I'll have to wait till I actually get them on to get an idea if it does look right or not. Then came another fitment test. This one I also posted both on Facebook and on YouTube in the reels. Not only was I checking out the new shape of the new shape of the shins, making sure they were fitting good with the foot, but I'd also made some cutouts in the hips of the midsection, because I had tried squatting before and I found out that it was actually hitting my legs and lifting the whole midsection up. I didn't have to cut out a lot. It was maybe like a ½ inch right there. So what I did, I didn't take a video of it apparently, but I would squat down and then I would outline where my actual legs were up, and then in this one then I was doing kind of a squatting test just to make sure that I had that clearance now with my legs. If I remember, I think with the legs, this was also the reason that I put the front straps in too, because I think they wanted to twist and not hold up properly when I was doing any kind of squatting. This kind of solved that problem. Everything was working great. The shins weren't getting caught. They bent onto the shoe proper at the ankles like I wanted. At this time though, I realized that the arms were looking a little thick. I think I posted it on Facebook or YouTube or one of the two, but I do remember someone saying that they don't look that thick and they look right, not to worry about it. But I go into detail into this in the last video where I said that I knew I was going to put everything on them, and I knew that that was going to make them even bigger, so I needed to cut them down regardless to make up for that. If you're watching this, and if you're watching these in sequence, you already saw me go into detail about that though, so I won't go into detail about it again. But the arms are a lot thinner now, and the pauldrons are good too. I think that, yeah, and that gets us pretty close to where I'm at now. I've done some detailing stuff, which I'll go into later. Oh geez, that's a mess. Which I will go into later. But a sneak peek, if you want, is this boy's starting to make some progress detail-wise. That'll be the next episode. So let's hype up the next episode while we're here. Most likely I'm not going to be able to keep up with the whole weekly thing that I've been trying to do episode-wise, just because working on these I don't have as much time as I would love to. Mostly because of my work schedule. So I work 12-hour work shifts, so when I get home from work, I might have an hour or two to myself before I go to bed, wake up, and go straight back to work. I have to figure out how that's going to work in my work schedule, but the idea would be then to, like, just for example, be like I would work my usual days, and then when I'm off the weekend, maybe try and record what I had done the last 2 weeks, because my work schedule is a 2-week rotating shift, so like it goes back to its normal schedule every 2 weeks, so every other week it's, yeah. So if I'm working every other weekend and I'm off every other weekend, I could probably Friday night maybe sit down, record what I'm working on, and then edit it by Sunday, and maybe have it on like a Monday or something ready, or something like that. They won't be scheduled, they'll probably just come out whenever, or once I figure out maybe a flow for that, I'll have like something figured out, but it'll probably take me a week or two to figure all that out, how it's going to work with my schedule, because Friday nights and Saturday nights are my skate nights. I don't get much crafting done, I go skating. If you've seen my RoboCop thing, you know that I love to roller skate. I roller skate several times a week. So that's it for this episode. Most of the fitment's finally done. The headache is now gone. I don't have to deal with all that. And we finally get to go into the fun stuff, which is detailing. There's still a few pieces I still have to make, obviously. The helmet, the backpack, weapons, all the sewing, the belt, a bunch of tiny little details. I need to organize a brand new list, which I have in that pile that I showed you beforehand, which is this one right here. And it's going to get scheduled to what I need to get done. So build is now priority, video editing is secondary. When I get time to get caught up on my schedule, that's when I'll do recording and editing. If I can't get on schedule for that, that builds first, because it's got to get done. So I'll see you when I see you, and stay tuned for the next one.